the approaches, the algorithms with how to network all of these chips together to get more and more performance out of them. So there's just this, we're in this amazing, brilliant period of really heavy duty, high impact science, engineering, and tinkering going on, which is just kind of really fun to watch. But our question...
And I say it's a virtuous cycle too, that
right.
each of these things reinforces the others and they make it faster and faster. But let's get to the viewer questions. You want to take a shot or should I?
Well, the question is a wonderful one and one that we get all the time. Aren't these algorithms only as good as the data they're being fed and the wisdom of the people doing the training? Yes and yes. So for example, if you're doing face recognition and because you're not very smart, you only show it faces of Caucasian human beings, wow, is that going to be lousy at recognizing Africans or South Asians, for example? So this comes up over and over again. The good news, this is a real concern, the good news is that the companies and the people that we've talked to are on top of that. They realize this is critically important, and they're not getting it right all the time. Nobody gets everything right all the time, but they're aware of these issues and they're trying to work them. Does that sound right?
That sounds right. Let me highlight one particular part. It's not just that they could be wrong and not be as effective, it's that they could be biased. If you show them, if your company or the data you have is a record of hiring certain types of people or giving loans to certain types of people, then those same types of biases will be built into the algorithm from the examples. They'll be built into the data set. And so you have to be very careful what kind of data you feed it to. It can not only be mistaken data, but it could be biased data. And we don't want
it could be incomplete, it could be skewed, it could have all these problems with it.
And we don't want to perpetuate those biases by putting them into a digital format and then replicating them all over the place. I think the two things to bear in mind that we mentioned in the article in the book is, number one, remember, humans are also very, very imperfect. You know, these biases came from us in the first place. So the benchmark, I don't think, can be perfection. It can be, can we do better than we're doing right now? And the second thing to bear in mind is that we can keep improving these algorithms. When you show that there's a problem with the data set, you can try to improve it and fix it and clean it. And often, hard as it is to fix the data, it can be even harder to fix human biases.
And I think this point is absolutely fundamental. When we're done with this session, don't go now, but when we're done with this session, go to the Wikipedia article on human cognitive biases. The last time we checked, that article had about, I think it was about 175 documented different human cognitive biases.
Wouldn't it be faster for them just to buy the book and then read that chapter?
That would, yeah, that would actually, we summarize them as well as we can. Yeah. But you know, get your feet wet in Wikipedia. And I think Eric's point is really important here. The baseline, the comparison point for AI biases and training sets should not be perfection. That's just really unrealistic. If our baseline is humanity, man, give me the algorithms today. I love people, our brains are awesome, but they are a hornet's nest of these really pernicious biases and glitches and things that really get in the way of making effective decisions.
Let's take more questions, but one more point to make about that is often when you combine humans and machines, you can get the best of both worlds. This is right. So the kinds of errors that machines make are often very different than the kinds of errors humans make. So for instance, looking at medical images, often machines come up with false positives. They say, hey, this looks like it could be cancer, even when it's not. And the humans are often better at ruling those out. So some of the best processes are to first have the machine screen through lots and lots of images, say, here are the ones we're worried about, and then a human doctor will look at them more carefully. And that combination does better than either the human or the machine working on their own.
And this is a really interesting research area and a great place for companies to get advantage these days. This field of how we combine what minds are good at with what machines are good at is changing very quickly right now because the machine capabilities are changing very quickly. The companies, the organizations that figure out how to bring together what we humans are legitimately really good at, for example, common sense, with what the machines are showing that they're legitimately good at, man, those companies have a big leg up going forward.
So I'm going to check off this thing. Not that we've solved all the risks and concerns, but we've touched on, we want to get into the others. Erica, should we take another question or should we go to the next point? Go ahead.
Let's take another question. This one's from Daniel, and he's asking, how can we use predictive algorithms to improve business strategy?
That's a really good question as well. So there's a company called Infinite Analytics that I'm advising that does exactly that. And what they do is they have these predictive algorithms to help companies choose their products, help customers choose their products. They're kind of like very sophisticated recommender systems. And because of the deep learning approach, they can not only look at the words, they can also recognize different kinds of clothing and different kinds of images and make recommendations based on those. Going forward, I think we're going to have more and more of these predictive algorithms that help people make decisions and make inferences about the future.
So, for example, we hear stories about venture capital firms that are giving algorithms a vote in the investment process. This is one of the most obviously important decisions that a VC firm makes, and they don't want to turn it all the way over to an algorithm, at least not yet, but they do want to have another kind of intelligence looking at these decisions, sifting through huge amounts of data to say, look, over time, did this kind of company with this level of funding, is the history a happy one or an unhappy one? Is the history in this geography a happy one or an unhappy one? They can do that kind of large-scale scanning better and probably cheaper than the humans can. So it's an important voice to have in the discussion.
Let me give you one more example that we write about in the article, the Harvard Business Review article, and that is Sebastian Thrun's company, which is Udacity.
This is a great story.
A great company that you can go to learn more about AI, get nano degrees in it. When people come into Udacity and try and decide which course to take, they have people in chat rooms, human salespeople, that give them advice. Well, Sebastian and his grad student recognized that the transcripts of those chats were training data that you could use to train a bot, train a machine learning algorithm, how to make the right decisions. Some of those transcripts led to sales and said, hey, these people are taking the course. Others, the person just went away.
And what machine learning is really good at is identifying the small differences that might be associated with a successful sale versus a prospective customer that vanished. So
they trained up the system, and indeed it was able to identify the phrases that were more likely to lead to sales. But the next thing is really important. It's really interesting. Instead of trying to have a bot that would just answer all the questions, that wouldn't have been realistic. They had the bot sort of look over the shoulder of the human salespeople and whisper in their ear and say, hey, you might want to try this word or try this phrase. I've seen this kind of question before, and here's an answer that seems to work well. And that improved the efficiency of the humans actually by about 50%. The humans still handle that long tail of weird questions that the bots had never seen before, but for the current common recurring questions that they had good answers for, the bot would help them. And this is a great example, not only how you can use existing data to create a training set, but also this symbiosis Andy and I were talking about of humans and machines solving the problem better than either of them could separately.
And what I particularly love about this story is that Udacity is a very technology-heavy company founded by one of the pioneers in machine learning. If they thought that that sales process was a job that should be given over to a machine, they would have no hesitation about doing that. What they learned instead, though, is they still want that to be a human activity. Even in a super technology-centric company, the sales process, this is an interpersonal process. It's one of the domains that we think automation will take over last, actually. So they kept that a very human process, but they had this fantastic cutting-edge augmentation going on during that process.
Erica, let's take another question.
Another question related to what you're talking about right now is education. A few questions about education. This one's from Diego, and he's asking, what impact does AI have on education?
Well, we were just talking about Udacity, and so there's an example of a company that is teaching people how to use it. But I think that this is overall one of the lagging areas. Although, Sebastian and a few others, Fei Li, and here at MIT, we have MITx. By and large, we're not doing as much with AI to help with education. It could be personalizing the curriculum much more, learning and recommending exactly what kind of answer, what kind of phrase will be helpful in getting someone to understand a particular part of the curriculum. It's a big, big opportunity going forward.
Exactly. There's a lot of lore in education around pedagogy, around how to teach something, around how to keep students interested, how to keep them in school. We can gather a lot of data, and we can actually go test this lore. One thing that I've learned from the work that we did that led to this article in this book is that over and over again, it's not that all the lore that's built up in a domain is wrong, but some of it is. And in some cases, important parts of our folklore around education and pedagogy are actually wrong. Let's go bang on that and use machine learning and AI as a tool.
And this is a data-driven approach. We write a lot about that in our book,
That's
not
right.
as much in the article, but it's not just using AI, but it's using this data-driven mindset where you do A/B testing to learn what works, what doesn't work. You do controlled experiments. Businesses have been thriving by using these techniques. You're probably being experimented on every time you go to a website with slightly different arrangements. But education could do this as well and see which technique works.